Hello and welcome back to George Past the Post. In Missabotti, in Cowper, in New South Wales, a very strange thing happened at the recent election. Of the 111 votes that were cast, 50 out of 111 were informal. And this was caused in large part by the voting system used for the House of Representatives, which is that you must number every candidate in order of preference. The only saving provision is if you miss one square out, they presume that it's blank. So in this case, people had to vote 1 to 11. So if you voted 1 to 10, they would assume that the last box would be 11. And in this specific polling station, according to the ABC, an article that they wrote, the staff, it appears, may have given voters incorrect instructions about how to cast a valid vote. In the House, as I say, you have to number every box. But for the Senate, the election held on the same day, the instructions are vote 1 to 6, and it appears that people were told incorrectly that they only had to vote 1 to 6 on both the House and the Senate. And unfortunately, in this instance, it appears that many people followed the incorrect instructions. So their vote wasn't informal because they spoilt the ballot paper, or they were protesting against the candidates, or even compulsory voting itself. Their votes didn't count because they failed to meet the formality rules. So this video is going to try and look at some of the ways in which such a situation may be rectified. Now, as a bare minimum, the staff, if they have given incorrect instructions, well, next time they should give correct instructions. They should encourage people to obviously read the instructions on the ballot paper, but they should, the last thing they should say to people is number every box for the House and 1 to 6 for the Senate, not 1 to 6 for both. But I think there's a broader issue with the whole system itself. When it was brought in, there would be about 3, sometimes 4 candidates in each electorate. Now, asking people to number 1, 2, 3 is far less onerous than saying, oh, number 1 to 11 or 1 to 15 or whatever it is. Now, the full preferential voting requirement is that it ensures that every vote cast has the same weight at each stage of the count. It's to avoid what's called exhausted votes, which is where, say you have 5 candidates, if you vote 1, 2, 3, and those 3 candidates are all eliminated, your vote is then exhausted. It doesn't then help to elect somebody else. And it ensures that the winner has a majority of the votes cast. But is it worth having such a system if it means that, while this is an extreme case of, well over 45% of people's votes not counting, is it worth it if the result is a significant number of people who have clearly said who they want to vote for, they've given a clear first preference? Is it really fair to say that their votes shouldn't count because they didn't number the boxes of every single candidate? Personally, and this is the first time I've actually expressed an opinion in these videos, I don't think it is fair. I think, and part of the confusion here is that in New South Wales for state elections, you don't have to number every candidate. So obviously people may get confused. They might turn up and think, oh, well, last time I voted in an election, I just had to vote 1, or whatever it is. So the options for preventing this problem, obviously I'd say bare minimum, the staff should give people the correct instructions, but that doesn't solve the issue of, it's a very, very limited savings provision. Yeah, unlike the Senate, ironically, where with the Senate, if you vote just 1, your vote will still count, because without going into too much detail, the previous Senate system, you could just vote 1 for a party if you wanted to. So the solutions are, yes, as I say, the more broader solution might be either move to what Australians call an optional preferential voting, but the rest of the world would just call, well, AV, alternative vote, or preferential voting, which is the more commonly used form. I think full preferential voting is just an Australian, just used in Australia. So that would be option 1. Now, politically, that may be contentious. When full preferential voting was first brought in, it was to stop the Labour Party winning against a divided Conservative movement, because there were several Conservative parties, and so preferential voting meant that they could still compete and stop Labour winning with a minority of the vote. Now it's nowadays it's actually the Labour Party that benefit from preferential voting more. So obviously politically it would be contentious, and you never quite know what the outcome would be. The other option would be a more minimal reform, would be to perhaps say that while the instructions would still say number every box, and those would be the instructions that the staff should give voters, and that's how people should campaign, and how to vote cards that are handed out should be. There should perhaps be a savings provision that says, if it's clear who somebody's first preference is, and their second preference, and third preference, and fourth preference, their vote should still be counted until such a time that they haven't expressed any preferences. Now, legally, I accept that there may be some issues with this, and of course it's as you can probably tell from this video, I am British, so it's not for me to in any way tell Australians what their voting system should be. I'm just this story sort of I looked at it and thought this doesn't seem right to me, and so that would be my suggestion, that at the bare minimum they should change the savings provisions. Now, I understand there would then be arguments that, well, if you're allowing votes that haven't filled it, if you're allowing votes that haven't given a preference to each candidate, you're effectively encouraging optional preferential voting, which is more likely to lead to a first past the post outcome. But under optional preferential voting, the second place candidate can still win if enough people give preferences. And why should people be forced to number the names of 15 candidates, many of whom they may not know, just to have the one vote that they really want to cast, first preference, count? So I'll leave it there. So it was a very strange story, as I say, and only made possible by the very strict rules in Australia for casting a valid vote. So hopefully this system will be, at the very least, modified. There was a recount in Bradfield in Australia, and I read an article about it, which a reporter sort of said how it was quite disheartening when they were going through the recount, because it involved looking at all the informal votes again, and just the large number of people who had clearly made a choice. They'd given a clear first preference for potentially one of the two candidates who were competing for the top two candidates, but their vote didn't count just because they hadn't filled in all the boxes. And is that really fair? Discuss. Okay, and I shall see you next time. Goodbye.